I think that's one of the grandest values that peer support brings is that ability to connect with someone you don't know, share lived experience, and walk on a journey together. What we do in peer support, I think it's confidence focused, and how we work toward individuals to take up more space and to feel recognized and valued. It's not the tools we provide or the resources we provide. It's the belief we have in everyone that they're doing the best they can and that they will find their way. They just need someone to believe in them.
Welcome to another episode of Peer Journal. I'm Nil Sunar, mental health peer coach, and today I have a fellow peer coach / peer support worker with me who has been much more experienced than me and who will talk to us about what's happening in Canada regarding peer support. Hi, Debbie. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, Neil. It's quite an honor to be here with you today, and I have been involved in the peer world, given my lived experience and now my ability to connect internationally for over 30 years. My journey itself started with my workplace. I had passion for being in law enforcement, I think, my whole life, and I very much studied university-wise and geared all my passion toward being able to connect with others and grow the community around trust for the police and safety. And it turned out that that wasn't a good fit for me, Neil, because what happened was I got to see firsthand how law and authority treat others possibly at their worst. And I lost faith in my community and my culture as a whole, and went into quite a dark space. And I thought, you know what? I need to take that passion of mine, keep connecting with people, but do it in such a way that I'm not an authority and that I'm listening to what people want to do and enabling them to connect with others. So consequently, I switched from that profession more to social work. And I was given an opportunity to start at one of our mental health agencies here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And it is a national organization called the Canadian Mental Health Association, and very much known as a volunteer-led organization providing services to individuals and families dealing with mental health issues. And so I realized that my lived experience at that time really enabled me to look at services that were being provided as being quite stigmatized, and with the expectation that us as professionals had a good idea what people needed, and really it was firm boundaries to protect them, I think, from growing or outgrowing the system that we created. So long story short, I took my kind of dream state. Some people would call that psychosis or altered state, but I took that dream state as an inspiration to change services. And so for me personally, I started to connect participants and form groups and networks. And I didn't realize I was doing peer support at the time. I just thought I was doing nurturing and growing a community of like-minded individuals that wanted to be able to find their true selves and kind of the joy in our lives, moving past a time of, let's say, diagnoses and clinical supervision to a point where where we could contribute to community and learn and grow. And the beauty, I think, for doing my work is I did connect nationally. I was able to do some training and education seminars, conferences, and the like, to introduce the idea of bringing community together and empowering individuals to be able to decide what they want and how they can move forward. So we did formalize peer support as much as we could, but we also wanted to keep it genuine and integral to the movement being one that is, I don't know, I'll just say very, very liquid and changeable, and addressing the current trends and times.
What I wanted to know is, in a lot of our lives, we always do peer support without knowing it. So it's always, usually, not always, but usually, in my observation, when it happens, when it becomes official, when we find there is such thing called peer support, and actually it can be a profession, be it voluntary or paid, that's a joy. At least it was for me. So when did that happen for you? You have been doing all of this, okay, but when you have become aware of peer support?
I think it became a joy for me immediately when I realized that I reclaimed my identity as a human being, not one based on diagnoses or limitations of such diagnoses. And when I saw people's faces light up, when you just would say, what matters to you? What would you like to see? And the joy was that we could move past the system that had trapped us to being able to connect all people. And it for me, as I grew to do a bit more training and leadership, it was that learning continuum that truly brought me joy. Like, one moment a person is hopeless and totally exhausted by the system, and their passion extinguished maybe by limitations, when the next moment that person turns to their neighbor and offers them hope. So that whole continuum of support, that's my joyous moment, where one moment we're receiving it almost like, we're needy and we don't know if we'll get through this moment. And then in no time after we've talked to another human being with lived experience who doesn't put us down or doesn't label us because of it, that's my joy, that's my spark. And I like to fan that flame and encourage others to just talk about their lived experience as a way of understanding what people can use to reignite their spirit and give them the hope. But the main thing is connection with me, Neil, I think, and talking to you today, and as we speak internationally, I can visualize us all being connected and our little small army out there.
Yeah. So where is happening peer support at the moment in Canada? If someone needed or maybe didn't know, but where would it be offered? So in the UK, for instance, it's usually the main health system, national health system, NHS, and some specialist charities like Voiceability comes to mind. There are a lot of other Mind, I think, in different locations. So in some charities and voluntary sector organizations. How does it happen in Canada?
Well, I wish I could tell you that it was a Canadian thing, but as you know, we're divided up into regions or provinces, and each province is responsible for their own health care. We get some government sponsorship, but generally it is designated down to the provinces, and they set that criteria of support. And in Eastern Canada, the majority of our population is centered there. Actually, we always say Toronto thinks they're the center of the universe. Here in Canada, we have a very thriving peer community, I think, between Ontario and Quebec. There's a lot of cities and a lot of chances for people to go in and generally through their health services and inquire where the peer support is. Now, here in Western Canada or in Eastern Canada, we've had to build that from the ground up without tons of government support. So as you just described in the UK, the health services, government-led health services, almost has a responsibility to say this is where peer support is. Here in Canada, we've had to go for grant funding, individual funding, to equip ourselves to be able to provide peer support. So we do have a network through Canadian Mental Health and through some of the provincial health services, but it's not centralized. A person generally says, once they connect with peer support, why didn't I know about this sooner? Why didn't somebody tell me? And so I think now that's where we're at now, is how do we get the word out? How do we get past the grant funding and project funding and pilot funding so that it's sustainable? How do we entice our government? Because we have a different political swing in each province too. And where I am right now in the province of Alberta, it's called the United Conservative Party, and it's very, very far right and sort of center conservative. And so there's the idea that is taking away from sort of a harm reduction model where we feel peer support definitely is proactive as well as able to collaborate with so many other services, not even necessarily medical, but we are slowly through our current government able to look at providing some support, like in an emergency room setting, talking to families and individuals that about the fact that as they go through the clinical maze, we as peers can help navigate the system and walk beside them to encourage them to go forward with whatever they would like to partake in. For example, if a person is going to counseling, we're very much tried to infiltrate in a lot of organizations. So we're introduced along with the counselors as someone that can help them to navigate and help them to, I don't know, just, how can I say that? Balance that clinical, because, you know, for us as peer supporters, Nil, and with our lived experience, we don't want to be reliant on the system like forever. Yeah. We want to be able to redesign it in such a point that it's not problem focused, it's strength based, and that people with lived experience continue to network and grow outside of the system. So I think bridging that, I see what we're trying to build. I'll say in Canada, but I can really only talk about Western Canada. Right now, I'm part of Western Canada Peer Training Society, And it's an organization we started to work with folks that already know about peer support to keep them connected professionally and to try to grow the recognition and remuneration of peer support too, because you mentioned initially, and it's very much the case as I talk about where you could obtain peer support here in Canada, probably less than half of it would even be in a living wage paid position. A lot of it is still volunteer.
Well, that will be similar in the UK. I wouldn't know the numbers or the ratio between volunteer roles to paid roles, if I'm being honest. But the way it's banded, which is how you get paid in the NHS, is if you get the average, it will be below living wage. But also it's important to say that not only peer support workers are on those bandings. There are a lot of different professions are also sometimes or most times under the median of living wage. So it is settled in the NHS in the UK mostly, but it's not that centralized. I don't think, for instance, Secretary of Health is at all aware of lived experience work. I talked to my local MP, so I know for a fact that she had no idea until I talked to her, even though she has a meeting every 2 weeks with the CEO of the trust I'm working in. But obviously, I'm sure they talk about a lot of stuff, and I'm sure a lot of those meetings get cancelled as well. That's the public service life, I suppose. But yeah, at least, so I get a lot of, why I didn't know about this, when I first meet people. So I totally get that. And it's difficult for me to describe it, especially because people are coming to mental health service, and this is an offer under the community mental health team here. So, and it is, I think, almost the only regular conversation-based option apart from therapy. So it's really confusing to people. What's different from therapy? So we all have our ways of explaining it. How would you explain it? Did that happen to you also? Like, did you have to explain the difference? Yeah.
Yes. And I think when I work at places or like I say, bridging with clinical services, a lot of folks are quite threatened by what we do. And not that we're doing therapy and we're having a negative impact, but because of our innate trust, because we go in a room with our lived experience, and we just have this ability to sit quietly and listen and not be directive or give advice. I think that's just a little too vulnerable for some folks. So what I say is that, firstly, I say we work collaboratively with therapists and counselors, but what we do is we grow individuals from the inside out. We work with the idea, like I said, in hope and connection. And for me, I think it's almost measurable, building confidence that a person can sit with someone they don't know and not feel judged, feel accepted where they are, in that they can also find their way out. And I think with counseling, I feel it's more guiding and directive. I think it's outcome focused. And with what we do in peer support, I think it's confidence focused, and how we work toward individuals to take up more space and to feel recognized and valued. It's not the tools we provide or the resources we provide. It's the belief we have in everyone that they're doing the best they can and that they will find their way. They just need someone to believe in them. And I think for me too, I always say that peer support is limited. I don't know. I could have a bit of a bias there, but I think sometimes people go to counseling and they don't know when they're done, unless it's a brief 5-session. But generally, you could just keep going and going. And I think with peer support, I think the idea is that people need to know when they're done. They need to know when it's time to take a risk and move forward and start to build their own personal network. And it might be with others with lived experience. That's a very good starting point for us, I think. That's why, for me, talking to you again today and hanging out with people with lived experience, it just provides me the genuineness. And in a world like today, when there's so much criticism and I don't know, just dissatisfaction, I think when you get people with lived experience together, they feel each other's joy, and they also know that we make a difference one person at a time. And I don't know, I think talking specifically any other differences, I just think that focusing on diagnoses and symptoms isn't as proactive either as we are in focusing on hopes and dreams. I think that's a question I was thinking of asking you, Neil, and maybe it's a good time, is just about what's your dream around peer support? What would you like to see?
I think in my mind, and when I'm talking about this in Turkey, as an alternative description, I talk about it being a healthy connection among public, among society. So because it's value-based work, and majority of the training we have are based on values, and also because majority of the people I worked with over 8 years, when I say I worked with, it might be confusing to some people. I mean, in quotation mark, the clients, not only colleagues. I just don't like them calling clients. They are people. And where we met was the fact that we had a very strong set of values. So those values don't always align. It doesn't mean that we have all the same values in the same order and all the time in the same way. But usually, people who appreciate peer support and who are able to get some change through that in their lives are people who have their own strong set of values, but they are not able to live a life based on that value. So the common denominator was not a mental health diagnosis. It wasn't the symptoms. It wasn't lack of sleep or poor diet. It was, I don't feel a part of society. I don't feel like I belong to this world because I don't confine in the mainstream rules that are set up for generations ago when the life was very different. But also I think majority of the people who appreciate the work and take part in the work are finding it difficult to find a place for themselves. Because whatever we believe, I don't think public services and the way government is set up is value-based necessarily. Or the value the values are very different and contrarian, the way we want to live. But there are also realities, and that reality is called money and how it's shared, and that's an age-old question. So how I visualize future is it will be peer support happening in the community, not under the health service. It will be a recognized, valued work, and understood that the way you're going to need to measure it is not a scale assessment. And there are ways to do that. It's not that it's impossible to achieve. So I know people who are listening or watching this might think, well, how is that going to happen? It's happening somewhere in the world. It's just I can't bring it to this episode today. But so there are it's happening in the community centers. You can get it drop-in. There are people getting training in those community centers if they want to become a peer support worker, voluntary or paid, and they can receive peer support in the same place. And it's the people's place as it should be. So that's the way I picture it. And it wouldn't cost as much as people are scared of. And a lot of people I work with told me, this is actually preventative for me. They told me at the end of, because we can only provide 10 sessions, they told me, if, I could get a call every 3 months, every 6 months from you, I have a feeling, which they are being kind, they know, but they are just saying they have a feeling, that it will be easier for them to keep going. And I always say doing this is part of my recovery. That's how I keep going as well. How do you see the future? How do you see the future?
I was listening to, it would have been a newscast from 1994 the other day. They were making a point that when the internet first came into conception, people just poo-pooed it, right? They said, who's going to sit in front of their computer and who would want to do this online and this? And I mean, as I think about it, I think the future and where we are with AI, for example, I find it, there's a scary vulnerability that people connect for peer support online and not be with a human being. I think the future is, as we always do, looking for similarities instead of differences, building those bridges, and encouraging people to get out into their communities. I agree with you. I'd like to see peer support in schools, in kindergarten, out in community, along with churches and culture clubs. I think that in the future, I think we're going to look back at this time and realize that we want to know who our neighbors are. We want to be able to go next door and borrow a cup of sugar if we need it, and we're going to have to work at relationships. The future is relationships. I think, like you say, value-based. I think that's one of the grandest values that peer support brings is that ability to connect with someone you don't know, share lived experience, and walk on a journey together. So in the future, I think rather than, us complaining or warring or looking at who holds the power, I think peer support, because it's mutual and neutral, I think that is the future.
I hope so, definitely. So for that future, where do you find inspiration and hope?
In chatting. I think in walking down the street and smiling. I think that was one of the positives that came out of COVID when we were all isolated. And I know there's some people who took that. I even know some people personally who took that time of isolation as the best thing ever, because they didn't feel vulnerable. They didn't have to go outside their comfort zone. But to me, I think I find the joy and the passion in just, smiling when I'm out grocery shopping, smiling at somebody and just feeling that connection. I need to be around people. You mentioned too, it keeps you well. It's part of your wellness journey. For me, it definitely is. I need to be around people. I need to feel that sense of belonging. And as long as I push myself, which, some days are easier than others, but that's where I will find it going forward. And as a leader, having been in positions of leadership for several years, I'm looking forward to what I call leading from behind, to really I say I want to fertilize those seeds out there now, and I want to continue to mentor people who have some ideas of how they could connect. There's some great ideas. I've got a good friend who's an artist, and he introduced peer support in the art community because they often work in isolation, and talking about that together is very inspiring, and it's just grown his creativity. I think he had a tendency to want to withdraw sometimes and express himself, but now they do a lot in small groups and showcase, and just, I don't know, the conversation is joyous to me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So that almost answered my last question, which was, is there anyone, any organization, anywhere people would find inspiring who is changing lives with lived experience? Is there, so that you want to celebrate? Basically, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to and tell people about?
Well, I just think our own community, what we've done through the International Peer Leadership Network.
Yes.
I didn't know I'd be talking to someone from Turkey, or talking to somebody from another an African state, or I think the shout out is us keeping that passion going, and the current leaders that are able to be in positions of influence, not to forget. I don't think they will. I think, like you say, our value base and continuing to bring hope. So all of us, Neil, I'd definitely give you a pat on the back too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So for people, you follow International Peer Leadership Network. I'll put the link in the description as well. So just, I don't want to lose that detail. I'm a member, and it's definitely a savior, and it's brilliant to see what's happening around the world as well in what we do. So before we go, is there anything you would want to say or add that we didn't talk about so far?
I don't know. I just like to ask you, what gets you up in the morning and puts a smile on your face?
Well, I'm just recovering from a migraine attack, so smiling in the morning is a challenge, but definitely at the moment, definitely this podcast, talking to people about what we do, 100%. Also comedy, especially for the last year, George Johnson. I've been following up. I quite like him, and I find it, the way he describes and explains stuff, very aligned with the conversations in peer support world as well, in an interesting sense. And doing this job and my family. Of course. Thank you for asking.
Well, you're so pleasant and easy to talk to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That helps in my job. That really helps. So thank you everybody who joined us today. And thank you, Debbie, for this great conversation. I really appreciate it. And I'll see everybody in the next episode.